this is I do more approaching throughout the street. Like I like to go out and meet women. I use dating apps too, but I like and that none of them on the dating apps either. The white girls on the dating apps, yes. The black girls, not one. Instagram, not one. In person, not one.
I think we have a little bit. We don't have enough information to understand what's going on here. Because like the point you made earlier, like even if you were just looking to have fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's not hate on this dude for identifying something that at least should be considered, right? If you are considered like a sexual predator here, if you gave off that vibe, that could be a factor. But
Not with hello though. But see,
no, but I don't. But that's what I said. I don't know enough about what
the
happened.
approach is the same with the white or the black chick. I approach women the same way. Why is it so happen
Yeah,
that
I
it
mean,
only works with the white girls?
I don't know. I don't know. If your assumption is that the preference for white men amongst black women here is stronger than in the other two cities, I wouldn't know to tell you if that's true or false.
Mm-hmm.
I would believe it's not true. I would believe that it should be black women would prefer black men here more because there's more institutional support for black identity and culture in Sao Paulo. There's a museum in like this is a good part of town where we're. This is like one of the richer parts of town.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the richest. There's a few other neighborhoods that are like really quite rich.
Mm-hmm.
One of the richest ones, which is right next to that park, the Ibirapuera, right?
Yeah.
There's a museum
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of that park, the Afro-Brazilian Museum, in the middle of one of the richest parts of the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
Black representation in Sao Paulo is there. I mean, I remember there was a whole festival. This was maybe like last year or maybe 2 years ago. I'm not quite sure. A whole festival on black culture, black arts, black music, black identity in Brazil. There is more than enough of what would be considered a pro-black movement in Sao Paulo.
So do you think I'm in the wrong area of Sao Paulo? I mean, it doesn't matter now because I'm leaving in hours, right? But do you think that I was in the wrong area searching for black women? But then we could say that, but then when we go to dating apps, and my dating apps are not in a 5-mile radius, they're in 50, 60-mile radius to cover a large portion of the city. Why is it? It's just not making sense.
How many of these interactions, like, can you, like, give me a range?
I've gotten closer, right? And usually they would initiate, and this was here in Pineros, where I've had a black woman, obviously black, like she would be a nigga in the United States, right? She called me out across the street because I was wearing my gym clothes and she was complimenting my body. So I took that as for what it obviously was, exchanged numbers with her. She actually offered the number first. But then she's bullshitting. That happens. That's not a race thing. That happens.
Yeah.
But the white girls are not doing that. Like the white girls are showing up. The black girls are the ones that either are pushy from the start, where you don't even want to fuck with them because they're so rude, in my experience.
Right.
Or if you do, it's like they sabotage it. But the white girls are not sabotaging it.
Again, how many of these cases are you talking about?
Usually I don't come to an assumption until it happens at least 5 times.
All right.
With a specific group.
Okay, so you have enough of a sample, right? But then my question would be, what would you rate the average, like, so if you averaged out on a scale of 1 to 10 for the white girls and you average out the scale of 1 to 10 for the black girls, like what would be the average of the white girls you were talking to versus the black girls?
I would say
if you could be as objective as you can.
I've approached. You're asking if the beauty was equally aligned.
Yeah, like with the average of the white girls you were talking to, was it like 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Was the black girls,
I
what
don't
was,
go below a 7 anymore. So we would say all of them were at least a 7.
okay, so the black girls were all a 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the white girls were all a 7 too?
Mm-hmm. Let me show you this. Tell me what you would rate her. And this is the quality, the most recent one as well, that I was experimenting this with as well. Her. Not like the ones we seen last night, but she's like a 7, would you say?
But she is not really that black. I don't even know if she'd be considered black in Brazil.
I think she would be considered black in the States.
In the States, but we're in Brazil, right? So, I mean, if you want to show the count, I don't know if they can see
No,
it.
I'm not gonna do that because these guys are fucking stupid with the way how they do things.
She's lighter than me. Like from what I'm looking at, she's lighter than me. And I think people in Brazil would perceive me as being mixed, but there's a lot of people who, if I was to put the label black or compare myself to you, they'd just say like no. And it's not even like in the US where they'd be like, okay, I'm light skinned and you're like, you know, just like not like dark skinned, but like right there, right? Like right on the point where it's just maybe like in between, right? But where people could potentially look at us in the US, both of us, and be like, oh, that these guys are black, right? That's not happening in Brazil. Like they'll respect that I identify that way because I have some of that heritage, right? Like, I mean, genetically speaking, scientifically speaking, right? I have African blood, right? There's no way around that, right? And you do too, right? So and I mean like West African, you know, like black people, right? So there's no way to get around that for either of us. But in Brazil, they will ignore a lot of that. Like I wouldn't consider her like, I thought you were talking about like a girl your color.
It's happened with them too, though. Like there's some chicks that you say like, oh, she wouldn't be black in Brazil. There's some, like I said, no matter where you could drop them off in Japan, they'll know they're a nigga. You know, there's some, this has happened with all shades. That's why I've come to this conclusion.
Of melanated chicks, basically,
Mhm,
is what
mhm.
you're talking about. Man, I don't know, because it's inconsistent with the other set of facts, right? Like we're talking about how in the other set of facts you have a huge pro-black movement in Sao Paulo. You don't even have this in Rio. You have it in Salvador, right? I noticed that, right?
Mhm.
In Rio is getting there, but in Rio, I would still hear a lot of like crazy racist stuff. Like I would just hear a lot of, like I remember I was in Leblon. Leblon is like one of the best neighborhoods in Rio. I was having lunch with a bunch of folks there, and not all of these white folks were from that neighborhood. They were from different parts of Rio, but they were, let's say, like well off, and they hang out in Leblon, right? At the very least, there's social circles in Leblon. And this one girl, I was like, I don't remember what she blurted out exactly, but she said something like, um, "Oh, like it's like I want to go hang out in this one place in Europe, like see all these beautiful Europeans, not all these ugly ass black people." Like she blurted it out, right? And then she kind of looked at me for a second, and then she kind of looked around and she was like, like trying to catch her words. What I thought was interesting about this is like I never heard anyone say anything even close to being like that openly racist in Sao Paulo or in Salvador.
That's interesting. Um, I
But
don't
in
know.
Rio, I've heard it a lot, and I have actually. There's this friend of mine, and oh gosh, now that there's these two football tournaments going on, right? Before the World Cup, they have the Copa America and the Euro Cup. But I remember at the time it was the World Cup, and we were watching it together. It was Senegal versus Holland or something like that. Anyways, it was some team with a lot of black players from a black country versus Holland or Denmark, one of these countries with a lot of blonde hair, blue eyed players. And she was saying how she was rooting for that team, the European team. And I remember something about the match because this was happening. There were a lot of matches that were a colonizer country playing a country that they colonized. So it was colonizer versus colonized, right? And she was rooting for the colonizer. And I was wondering why. And she was like, "Well, thanks to them, we're beautiful." Like I'm glad that they
Yeah, that
colonized us.
explains a lot.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
But that was in Rio. I never heard that here.
Yeah, you never heard that here.
I never heard that here. But I haven't spent as much time in Sao Paulo.
How long have you been in Sao Paulo?
I mean, I've visited a number of times. I'd say altogether, like maybe a few months. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how long, but this is over the course of years. Rio, of course, I spent a lot more time there, and I heard a lot more of these conversations. In Rio, back in the day, like this was like over a decade ago. I remember there was this black chick that I was going out with there, and she was intelligent. She had her own business. She was making money. She spoke English. She was fit and beautiful. Like there wasn't like maybe personality wise there were some issues with her, but there wasn't like anything obviously. There wasn't any obvious problem with her, and yet I had a lot of friends who seemed deeply disturbed and concerned about the fact that I was dating a black woman. Like they had a really big issue with this. Like they were like stopping me, like, do you want me to introduce you to somebody? Like what's wrong? Like I don't get it. Like what's the problem here? And Rio is one of these places where I could tell you straight up, like I don't know who you've hung out with there, but I've hung out with people who are professionals living in like the good parts of town, and I could tell you they have a really big issue seeing like one of their friends, somebody in their social circle, introduce somebody who they're dating who is black. They have a big issue with this.
I don't know, man. I didn't have that issue though. I didn't have that issue with the chicks in Rio. And I had.
But again, right? Are you talking about just casual dating, or are you talking about you're in a relationship and you're in a social circle?
Well,
what social circle do you have in Rio?
Well, the thing is, here's the point I'm getting at. Whether if it's a relationship or casual dating, here it's almost like don't talk to me, stay away from me with the black women. There, you don't get that. Like that's why I said before, is whether if it's about sex or relationship, they would never know what my intent was because here it's get away from me.
Yeah, man. And so basically, like I said before, right? What I see evidence of on a big scale, I see evidence of pro-black movements here, black identity. Actually, probably the most beautiful girl that I have ever seen in Sao Paulo was a black woman. Albeit she was light skinned, but she was obviously black. She had her hair out like an afro, but she was absolutely gorgeous, and she was with a black guy. So I don't know what to say about that.
So I want to address some of these comments because people are saying very ignorant stuff. And I just explained why the hell that's not what I'm saying.